Many feel that meditation, reflection, even spirituality is something to be done while seated in a quiet, isolated place, submerging the self in experience of peace. While that's very important, there is much more to the spiritual practice. The final objective is to be able to bring my true nature of peace, my true nature of kindness, respect, honor, and integrity into my day-to-day life. Let those qualities color how I think, how I see, how I speak, even how I feel. My practice while seated has to be very honest, that I am awakening those qualities within to such a degree that they melt everything false within the self. That when I move from seated into sound and action, all that remains to be expressed is the true nature. I don't have to analyze myself into spirituality. Spirituality becomes my genuine character, natural nature. And this is why, when seated, I seek out the support of the one whose character is always true, always divine. God, the Supreme Soul, the one we often refer to as the divine. Through a truthful connection to that one, I receive the power to transform, not into something new, but into who I truly am. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to an interview with Raj Yogi. It's been a long time, so thank you for your patience as we have been away, and yes, a little rusty. So tonight's topic is character of truth. For our regular students, the theme of this month is truthfulness and good manners. I don't think I'm saying adopting the culture of truth and good manners. I was very touched by I don't know if I can find it, but the theme, well, the subtopic related to the theme, which had a lot to do with the truth cannot be hidden. And so I know as well you had shared before this topic started, this theme, and you were connected between truth and kindness. And just listening to the meditation commentary, it's interesting because this topic, adopt the culture of truth and good manners. I think sometimes we just think of good manners as how you're supposed to be with others. So it was quite refreshing to hear listening to the commentary. It's a lot about what you are actually like when no one is watching you. So just perhaps maybe to start this theme for this evening, if you wanted to share about this, what your feelings were about truth and how that unfolds into just how one is being, especially when you're not in front of others, because we can sometimes not even be aware if we're actually really being real in front of others.
Om Shanti. The little daily inspiration you brought up was titled The Light of Truth. And so this idea sometimes comparing things to the sun. And, the sun is always being sunny. It's always its sun self. It's not that when we look away or something, it turns into some shriveled prune. It's always this way. So, this light of truth, and to understand that truth is always connected to what is eternal, that is innate, intrinsic. So, what's actually our true human nature or natural to us? And the suggestion that we've actually become a bit unnatural, that actually took us a lot of work to be untrue, to be unkind, that this is. I know it feels like it's work to be honorable, but actually to be honorable was our original nature. So it's really a case of being, I think, truthful in my efforts. In other words, if I apply the method properly, then the result will be a very natural, genuine, constant stage of truth. A sign that I'm not being truthful in my spiritual endeavor is that I still am inconsistent. I'm still working very hard. This is something that was coming to me the last few days, is we try so hard to be good. That's a sign that I'm actually not being truthful in my spiritual endeavor to become true. Things should actually get easier. It should be easier and easier to be kind and truthful and honest. So, not that we need to feel bad about it, but it's just good feedback that if it's still laborious, I'm still working hard. It means that my truthfulness is still kind of a show or on the surface, and it's not coming from that natural, innate place. So, am I truthful in my spiritual endeavor in applying the method to become true?
So both Judy and myself, we were in Madhuban, so the spiritual headquarters in Mount Abu. And the theme for one of the retreats that we were in was soul consciousness, our natural nature. And you were sharing something the other day that where do you put the emphasis? And I don't know if that ever came up for others, or maybe it's subconscious. They think nature, and then they're already trying to be something without soul consciousness. And so just listening to you share, there's something that souls have always talked about, that there's lots of negative attitudes towards spirituality, or maybe negative experiences in this birth, or maybe previous births, they don't even know it's there, about spirituality being ascetic, this emptiness, this nothingness. So saying soul to someone, you're a soul, it may be meaningful to a soul and may not. But let's say if it is meaningful to a soul, sometimes it seems like the things that we try to do to practice having the experience actually could have a bit of a nothingness feeling. So how, when you're talking about being truthful in my spiritual endeavor, what has your journey been like in terms of just traversing that gap? I'm sure we all have misnomers within ourselves with we may or may not know about.
In some ways, our approach to change has become very laborious and sometimes even violent. The most extreme example is war. And so, this idea that transformation is not so much fighting against the bad or fighting against the darkness or repressing or oppressing. And I think these things give spirituality a bit of a difficult, that our nature is intrinsically or originally sin and all of this, and we're just trying to keep that at bay. But this concept that we are intrinsically good, and that I was remembering a lot the other day because we have a workshop coming up. So it had me thinking about this a lot, that when I was in art school, my very brief period in art school, 1 year, it was playing in the sandbox, and my favorite subject was color theory. And we had to go get supplies. And so you get your oil paints. We're working with oil, and you get all these little tubes because you really just need it for these little projects, these little tubes of color. And then it comes to buying the tube for white. And you get this massive, this massive tube for white. And you're probably going to need a couple of those. And you're like, because you're given a shopping list by the school, and you go to the shop and they give you what's on the list, and you're like, oh my gosh, this big tube of white. And what happens is that when you've got a color in its intrinsic, its true, pure state, what we call full saturation. In spirituality, we say full and complete, your full saturation. If you add even a speck of black or a complementary color to break it, it takes just a speck to corrupt a color. And once it's corrupted, it takes so much white to reverse that. So much white, like you're just, yeah. So, what we want to do in spirituality, because you can't kind of extract, try and pick out or fight it. You just want to flood the place with purity, with good. This is the whole point of yoga. So we're not fighting against anything. We're literally flooding the self by the soul with pure love. Flooding, flooding, flooding. It's a very enjoyable journey if I figure this out. Flooding it. But we're so used to feeling bad about our acquired badness that we spend way too much time in the dark. And instead of just keep flooding it, it all sort of works out. That full saturation is restored. So that's kind of something to figure out, when I make a mistake, when I dishonor my core values, if you will, what is my response? Is it immediately to dive into that pure love? Or do I sort of spend time dwelling in the darkness and thinking that is going to create change? I know we just got that saying today, that I'm not going to, change doesn't happen. It's not that I'm thinking I'm bad, that it's going to create change, but actually it's embracing the great, the goodness. It's going to create loving the self that will restore greatness. So really, turning on one's head what this transformation looks like. And that can take time. We're so used to feeling bad about how we've moved away from our goodness. And part of a good spiritual model is it removes any blame, shame, guilt, or regret, and freeing the soul to be flooded by pure love.
We've heard, some of us have heard this example. It's maybe some sort of psychology research, and you've shared this many times. You might even share it in a Raja Yoga course, and so others may have heard it about, there's a mother on one side, there's these mothers on one side and their babies on the other side, and there's this platform made of glass, and this platform, if you look through it, it looks like as if it drops into nothingness. It's as if it's like an invisible bridge. And so you've shared about this interesting example of, the mothers who have to coax their baby forward. And I don't know, I think they're pretty smart babies that they're noticing, that there is a chasm here, I don't know if I really want to cross it, but you share that, it's that mother's love that helps them to, to be able to actually crawl along that seemingly invisible bridge. Just when you were sharing, I was thinking about, you were saying flood my inner world with this goodness. I was thinking about truth. Is it sufficient just to hear about the truth? Is there where does love, like God's love, play a role? Because it could be possible that there's still so much unworthiness inside, or loathing going on inside, that you hear it when it speaks to one's heart, but there's still a lot of other stuff. It could be even habitual in terms of being able to say, I willingly want to have, pure thoughts for myself. It seems like it could be a big leap for some, especially if they've had a certain attitude about themselves for a very long time.
I've always appreciated, first off, to be very patient is obviously important, but I've appreciated the way Raj Yoga in particular is set up, which is 4 subjects. One flows naturally into the next. And for some, they flow very quickly, for some, different speeds. But the first subject we can just call understanding. And I think to really, if I can't quite get to the yoga, which is that link of love, the receipt of pure love, then maybe that just means I need a little bit more of that understanding. There's a beautiful quote that I think it was on your yogi card from Silence. This idea of the coolness of the moon makes me worthy, so I'm able to take the warmth of the sun. That the coolness of the mother, if you will, in spirituality, mother is the symbol for understanding. So really, if I can't flood with that pure love yet, if there's just not the worthiness, I can certainly keep working with the understanding until such time as it melts. This is why that subject comes first, is I need to really, I know it sounds an extreme word to use, but be brainwashed. I need to wash my brain because some very odd beliefs have gotten mixed into my head. And the deepest one is a lack of self-belief. That's the deepest belief that has gotten mixed into my head. So there's sort of this brainwashing that happens. And we say, it needs to be daily. It's not a small thing that we're trying to address. So daily exposure to brainwashing, that is to spiritual wisdom, to a different understanding of myself, goes a long way in cleaning out that belief that is a myth, that lack of self-belief, so that I can begin to receive pure love. And I think I just want to say, being truthful, hold out for the real thing. I think we're so desperate to feel that pure love from God that we might even fake it. I know that sounds harsh. Don't do that to yourself. Don't worry if you seem to be taking longer than others. No one knows what's going on inside anyone else, anyways. You deserve to get the real thing. So be truthful in your endeavor.
I was reflecting on vibrations, and some souls have had chances to visit a center, and there's a certain vibration in the atmosphere. What role does that play? If someone were to be, if they, they can't really, there's huge blockages inside, can that help? Like eventually, an accumulation of just being in that kind of powerful atmosphere. But eventually, it seems like I would have to have, I need to start to have a different understanding of myself. So there's that aspect of learning the truth of who I am.
The spiritual atmosphere can come from a center, absolutely. It can also come from an individual, and that to me is the true meaning of a senior, actually. The atmosphere, so what's happening is at the other end of the spectrum is something called ego, which is wrong valuation of the self, false value of the self, looking for self-value in all the wrong places. So you have love for truth on one end, and then you have ego and false value on the other end. Ideally, what an atmosphere, wherever it's coming from, is doing is melting ego. So what that looks like is a soul comes into that space and feels comfortable. They feel safe. They don't feel judged, and they actually feel empowered. So the atmosphere is huge. We often say that the arrow will strike the target if the vibration is there, depending on the stage, more than the words. So whether it's a facility or an individual, and I feel that this is really the invitation for all the students, committed students at a BK Center, to all feel that they're helping to create that atmosphere, because they're all serving whoever comes into the center by creating that atmosphere.
I'm going to flip your example you had about the white paint and the colored tubes. Just in terms of authenticity, I was thinking about authenticity of character and what does that mean in terms of vibration? Not for this to be an art class, but I remember learning when I took art classes that when you were talking about even just a speck of another colored paint, can really compromise, just the brilliance and purity of that white. But I remember learning as well, it depends on how concentrated and the quality of the color of the paint is. If it's not good quality at all, you're not able to make a difference. Reason why I was thinking about, and we actually had this conversation maybe a few days before I left from the spiritual headquarters. We were talking about soul consciousness, about to have like certain thoughts and certain awareness. Where is that line in terms of you can have really nice thoughts and maybe have a certain kind of character, but what's happening at that vibration level? How does that all work? Like, how is it that someone can just, it's not that they're trying, it's just not very real in terms of being whatever it is, authentic in terms of kindness towards others, towards the self, etc. And then someone where it's very genuine. And like, how does that all work? Because again, this is all very invisible.
I used to find it so interesting when I would watch what we call the original students, or maybe even senior students, really senior yogis, that they weren't always smiling, and they sometimes made mistakes, and yet things still moved very along very well. And I started to realize that they had accumulated the power of purity, and that we sometimes have expectations of what that's supposed to look like. But actually, at the end of the day, it's this power of purity that does the work. So, again, am I truthful in my endeavor? Am I actually connecting to the one we call the purifier, the Supreme Soul? Am I actually receiving that pure love? It might on the surface look like all sorts of things. And we often hear in our classes, the good ones don't have yoga, the good ones. And so we have a concept of what's being good and kind, and it's maybe a little superficial. And goodness and kindness actually goes very, very deep to the purity of the soul, which we could call vibration. The soul is energy, so that the soul is now stable in a different frequency or energy. But the spiritual term, I suppose, is how much purity is the soul. So very deep, deep change has happened, we might say, in the subconscious. So that again requires me to be very truthful. We do often, and it is a question of how much is my consciousness in a true place? What we call soul consciousness. And this is where again the ego can often interfere. Is I want so badly to look good and hopefully to be good, that I might, as we say, fake it, or just, jump over the actual effort and just try to be virtuous, and without actually doing the work. This is very evident when you are in a fitness or physical endeavor, this type of class. It's very obvious what this all looks like when one tries to achieve certain things without doing the inner work. For a ballet master, they can very clearly see what's going on.
I'm going to sneak in one last question. I'll just use an excuse that we've been away for a month and a half. That's our last. And we were slow coming in. Our excuse is the IT isn't working. What is ultimately for oneself who is actually studying is that they are absorbing vibration, with the vibration of the experience of that connection with the Supreme Soul, experiencing, I suppose you can say one's own vibration, one's own experience of the self. What do you feel is the impact of that when that vibration is real, it's pure in terms of the self and the impact on others too?
Time and again, we're told about the impact on the vibration on the self. Obviously, the true nature is emerged, but top of the list is we're happy. Doesn't matter what's going on outside. So we're less and less influenced by what's happening. There's more integrity to the soul when I'm making effort at that deep vibrational level. Our happiness becomes more stable. In terms of what it means with people or with matter or with resources, everything now is going to be touched by benevolence. So I don't have any desires. I don't need to know outcomes. I just know. And this is the beauty of it. That vibration is like the Midas touch. Whatever it touches, it creates a wave of benevolence. And that can look in a variety of ways. It might mean that someone loses all their wealth. Whatever is beneficial is going to happen. So we can completely trust the vibration of purity and how it unfolds. It also is a bit like an alarm clock. It can wake souls up. So it has a power to it. So when souls, even temporarily, we've been told, even temporarily for that moment, they might wake up. They might go back to sleep. But for that moment, they will wake up. They will find thoughts coming into their head just for that moment. And then they may go back to sleep. But it can wake souls up.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you for those online for joining with us on Instagram and YouTube. So we'll have a little short reflection.
Spirituality, the journey of self-transformation as a starting point, a seed. And that seed is truth. To be able to plant the seed of truth deep in my own inner world, my own consciousness. That seed of truth is that I am a soul distinct from the body. Truth refers to that which is eternal. The body is temporary. I am not. So the seed of truth is where I focus my attention. It's not meditation, it's remembering the truth. Remembering what was forgotten long ago. The very seed of my existence. And being truthful in the planting of that seed. It doesn't just sit on the surface, it goes deep underground, deep into my consciousness, deep into the cell. It becomes my reality. The truth is, I am a soul, separate from the body and the story of the body. Once that seed is planted, the rest of the journey to truth unfolds naturally. That I belong to the Supreme Soul and that my purpose is peace. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining with us this evening. So I believe we have some sessions coming up. So there is the Raja Yoga Foundations course, I believe, starting this Friday. So that's 4 Fridays at 6:30 to 8 o'clock at the Inner Peace Center. And we also have Learn About Meditation. It's a one-time session. You can register if you want. You can just drop in at the Academy, 12:15 to 1:30. And all of those details are all on the website, calgary.brahmakumaris.ca. And of course, we have these online sessions every evening. There's always something that happens on YouTube at 6:30 to 7:30. 6 days a week, it's the evening meditation session. And then on the Tuesdays, the interview. So thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.